Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Yorktown Planning Board meeting of December 4th, 2023, and ask if you could rise and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our chair is not feeling well today. I got a message this afternoon that he was under the weather and won't be able to join us tonight, so I'm going to hopefully run a meeting with only 3 items on the agenda and see how long that takes this evening. I haven't seen an agenda like this in a long time.
Not me.
But there is still plenty of substance to go through. First item on our agenda is correspondence. I have confirmation from Riccadella Estates regarding their bond. I have late-breaking correspondence from the New York City Department of Environmental Protection regarding the Stammer subdivision. It's essentially an approval. And I have a letter in connection with the Penna subdivision, which is basically a letter to them from the planning department referencing our comments to that particular applicant. There's a couple of other items that are not on your agenda, which we'll cover. They're just some additional documents that are not in the package, rather, but relate to further agenda items. So we'll get to those in turn. Next item is to approve and review and approve the minutes from our previous meeting. Is there any corrections or changes that need to be made?
No, not here.
Any? I'll take a motion then to approve the minutes as presented. Thank you, Nancy.
So
Motion.
moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. The regular session will open with a decision statement on guiding eyes for the blind. We'll take 3 resolutions tonight, one on the lead agency, one on a negative declaration on the environmental impacts, and hopefully pass a resolution as presented. Good evening.
Good evening.
Have you had a chance to look over the materials presented?
We did. Dave Steinmetz, the project attorney, was not able to make it tonight, but David Cooper's here, and just in case we need. But the resolution and the neg deck have been reviewed by us, and we have no issues with the conditions.
Any comments from the board
None.
on these?
No.
Any from John or our attorney on these resolutions?
Mr. Chair, we have nothing.
Okay. And I do note that, you know, there are many conditions in here which do reflect the discussions we've had between yourselves, the applicants, and our board, and I think that's quite good. It reflects what we're hoping to see. So I'd like to ask for a motion first for us to be declared the lead agency on this matter.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Next is to adopt the negative declaration that is presented. Motion?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. I vote aye as well on these things. The last item we have is the resolution of approval. There are the usual recitals in this resolution about the documents and the plans that we did consider. And I believe there's one addition that needs to be made to the resolution. There are actually 2 things. The EAF date needs to be corrected to reflect July 6th, 2023. And the Barton and Judici memo dated November 30th, 2023 needs to be included as an agency report that we considered. The last one that was listed here was from September 21st, so we need to add that one. And I don't believe there are any other changes to these resolutions, so the conditions of approval pick up extensively from our agency memos and incorporate a lot of their recommendations. All of the different things that we have reviewed in the past appear to me to be in here. And if there are no further comments from the board, we'll take a motion on the approving resolution with the 2 changes I just mentioned.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Okay. Good night.
Good luck. You know, Guiding Eyes is a great business in town. we're happy to see you staying in town and expanding your business here, so very happy about that.
I'd just like to take a moment to thank John, Sergio, the planning board, for what I thought was a very thoughtful and deliberative process for both the community as well as for Guiding Eyes for the Blind. The conditions I thought were fair and equitable, both to the community as well as to the organization. And it's a pleasure being able to serve our mission here within the midst of Yorktown. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're a good neighbor.
That's it. That completes our regular session agenda. We have 2 items on the work session. May I have a motion to close the regular session and go into work session?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Number 4 on the agenda is IBM. This is an application for a temporary lab waste emergency storage tank located at 1101 Kitchewan Road, or Route 134 in southern Yorktown. Good evening.
Good evening. Scott Miller with Spot Stevens and McCoy. We're the engineering consultants for this project. Basically, I think the outline is that we are planning to replace one of the existing wastewater tanks that are on the campus for IBM. That is about 165,000 gallons. We are planning to replace it basically in kind at the same location. But unfortunately, we have to provide temporary tank storage while that tank is being replaced and reconstructed. So the plan shows a temporary tanks being on the property. They are going to be basically, they kind of look like trucks that back in, and they have the storage. There will be 11 of those. They will be double walled. They are originally designed for 25,000 gallons per unit, but unfortunately, because of the double wall, they're going to be only 16,000. That's why we need the 11 units on the plan. So, do you mind pulling the plan up real quick, or it might be easier. I have a color rendering
I didn't see one in our materials.
as well. Kind of pops a little with a little bit of color. This is the existing tank that's going to be replaced. It's self-contained in a concrete pit. We are going to be lowering it slightly, and again, putting in the tank. It only sits about 3 or 4 feet above the ground, so it's not a high tank. And some of the pictures show that. And then up here is where we have the 11 temporary storage tanks. As laid out here, and they will be interconnected while this process is going on. And then once it goes online, it will be operational again. Unfortunately, both locations are located in the wetland setbacks that you have established for, not in the wetlands, but in the setback. So we have applied to the state regarding that encroachment into the setback. And also, obviously, we're submitting plans to the town to get feedback on the next step on the approval process for this project. And I do have representatives here from IBM if there's any specific questions regarding the use of the tank and what's in it and so forth. So if you don't have any other questions, I'll be interested to see what the board and the planning staff has to say about the project.
Okay, questions? Go ahead.
My question is, you say temporary tanks, they'll be removed once the original tank is replaced?
That is correct.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you have rough time window on that?
Okay. 9 months.
Okay,
What's there now where the temporary tanks are going?
It's just basically gravel. So we're going to reinforce the gravel that is already there, because it was a laydown area for some of the other projects that were in that area for replacement of some of the towers, the cooling towers. And then, again, it'll be reestablished as gravel once the tanks are removed.
What's the makeup of the wastewater?
Nah, I was gonna ask that.
You knew we were going to ask that question, right?
Yeah, just come on up, yeah.
Yes. If you want to introduce yourself.
Sorry. And what's the ullage of the storage tank in the ground?
So my name is Don DeMuth. I work in the environmental department up in the IBM lab. The makeup of the wastewater can vary greatly because of the nature of the research that goes on, but it is typically higher pH or low pH depending on the kind of processes that are going on. I might add that the wastewater going into that tank only occurs very occasionally. It hasn't happened in a number of years, but as mentioned, it's an emergency storage tank. And what was your
The ullage. What is the maximum usable capacity of the ground storage tank?
of the permanent tank?
Permanent tank, correct.
165,000.
That's the maximum capacity. What's the ullage? Doesn't go into a sink, it may go into a small storage area and then go to this larger tank. Is that all just questionable pH water, or is there any other chemicals?
Yeah, there are other chemicals, but the nature of the wastewater is it's acidic or basic. I mean, there may be some organics that get into the wastewater, but that doesn't make the wastewater flammable by any means. It's, ppm level.
No, I do understand that, but you can start getting into solvents and other things that are not basically pH problems, they are problems.
Yeah, and we have a limitations on what the wastewater system can be used for at the labs. Most of the organics are collected in containers and shipped off-site for incineration. There are some processes where wafers are rinsed of organics, and that you may get some small percentage or ppm level.
All right, because cleaning solutions of that type
Correct.
are something that would be different than just high pH or low pH wastewater.
Correct. Yeah.
And that is handled differently.
It is handled in the same manner. It's part of the same waste flow out of the laboratories.
But it's not deposited into the storage tank. Solvents and,
So
you do understand
rinsing-
where I'm getting at. You're not supposed to be storing solvents that would not change the pH, but it would change the combustion level and other things in the,
Yeah, and that's what I'm getting at is the nature of the wastewater. Combustibility is not a question. I mean, it's very dilute, except for the pH issues that we treat for before we pump it off site on a normal basis. But the amount of other items are, again, ppm level, where you don't have other hazards entering into the picture.
is there any analytical done to this water before it goes off-site? And
Yeah, on a monthly basis, and we collect that information and send it to Westchester County on a semi-annual basis.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Down here.
John?
I don't have any questions.
I see a plan up there, but I didn't see it in our materials, in terms of where this is going to be. There's no diagram that I've seen unless I missed it.
You mean the overall
In your,
campus?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I thought there was an aerial that was included, but this is located in the back corner. I guess we don't have one on here. So it is located on the main campus. Yeah, there we go. So it is located behind the building, back where all of the mechanical equipment is located. So again, the intent was to replace, without changing any of the footprint of the existing emergency lab waste tank. It is contained within a concrete dike, as shown on the drawing.
And you have 11 tanks, and that's presumably to match the capacity of the permanent tank?
Yes, correct.
And they're gonna, and so when you, earlier, I think you said it's in the setback area of the wetland zone? Do you mean within the buffer?
Within the buffer, yes, correct.
And those tanks are gonna sit on what currently is kind of a gravel surface?
Correct. Yeah, so
Are there any other containment precautions that you can take for, and I don't know if there's risk of spillage or anything, like if they're transporting materials out or something like that, on that gravel base within that buffer area? Any other containment type of?
I think there is a containment within that. We can provide a little bit more information with the next plan submission to give you a little bit better clarification of that.
Would the liquids ever be taken from those tanks and moved into, say, a truck to take them away or something like that?
Would they be transferred?
No, I think they're meant to be the same process that's there now. It's just that they're going into these tanks instead of the larger permanent tank, and then back into to be processed, and then back out to the sanitary sewer service.
Okay, so they're part of kind of a water treatment facility that you
Yeah,
have
we're
there.
just it's kind of a big bypass. Is basically what it is. To go into these tanks instead of the main tank, and then back through the system.
Then where does it go?
Back into the system.
It goes back into the sanitary sewer.
Okay.
Is there going to be a further discussion about the replacement of the tank itself in front of this board, or?
Yeah, we can provide more information about that.
I mean, right now, we're talking about just the temporary tanks, but are we going to eventually get into a conversation of what takes place in replacing the existing tank?
Well,
Because that's in the buffer area also.
Yes, that's the intent is
Okay.
that we were going to do both of these simultaneously, and that again, the tank itself that's being replaced is currently, even though it's located in the buffer, it is still going to be contained within the footprint that was there before.
Right.
So.
But there's a construction process that's going to now take place again.
Yes,
So,
correct.
okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, the wall is meant to remain. We are going to excavate down a little bit further and then replace everything that's inside that concrete wall.
So there's a little more that we need to see, I would think, based upon these
Yeah,
comments,
I mean,
right?
we submitted the site drawings, but there is a complete packet of construction drawings.
That's yet to come.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
The tank that's in the ground, or the one that's replacing it,
Oh, this is
I'm assuming that's double walled also?
Yes.
All right. Is there leak detection
Okay. so
in the vault itself and then in the secondary containment?
I'm assuming so, yes.
And that is fed to a monitoring station, or is it on just at the tank itself? The information about leak detection, does it go to a monitoring station, or is it just something that gets looked at every day?
Why don't you come up? People who can't hear you from when you're sitting.
Yeah, I'm just interested
Yeah,
in
no,
the
it's fine.
leak
I'm Anthony
detection.
Manzi. I'm the design and construction program manager at the Yorktown site for IBM Global Real Estate. So, yes, all the leak detection, the level monitoring in the tank
Yes.
is monitored back at our control center and in our central utility plant by our 24/7 staff there. So that all reports back to our building management system.
And I am assuming somewhere in close proximity to this tank, there is a fill and a pump station. Well, I'm assuming the tank just opens a manhole and they drop a pipe in to pump it out, or does it Or it must get pumped out? It has to go.
The pump out system is permanent with the tank, so if that tank were to
It's
ever,
hard pipe.
normally that tank's empty, it's an emergency tank, so like Don said before, normally if that tank gets fluids in it, we're having a bad day on
You have
site.
an issue, yes.
Normally that tank's empty, empty's good. If it does get liquid in it, it has a permanent piped pump in an adjacent pump house that would pump that to the regular treatment stream.
All right, so that leads me to a question, and it's probably a little bit off topic, but what was the worst-case scenario that you had to put a tank in that large that stays empty most of the time?
That's basically due to IBM regulatory requirement. That's our own, I think it's 2 days of storage, is that correct, Don?
It's a corporate instruction.
Where we have to be able to contain, if for something, let's just say downstream in the Ossining plant couldn't take the waste for some reason.
You had to
Your
hold
pump
on
station
to
went
it, yes,
down and we're
yes.
all of a sudden now our waste can't go anywhere. We could, 2 days of full stream storage, which we probably wouldn't have, we'd have to shut the site down and everything, but that would be the only scenario where that would get
Okay.
liquids.
Thank you.
Anything else?
That's it.
So are you now going to present additional information to us as we go forward with this review?
You mean the next step? for
Yeah.
this? Yes, this was the initial kickoff based on your planning schedule.
Okay?
Yeah, we needed to submit a pre-application, or pre-preliminary, which I think this is.
Yes.
And then I was hoping to get direction, again, what the next steps would be, and then we would provide all the documentation that supporting that
Okay.
next step.
Well,
Yes, John.
I think we should, on this, consult with the engineering department, because I have a question whether this is rightfully a planning board matter at this point. If they're actually just replacing the tank in kind and reconstructing it, it may be a wetland permit that originates in the engineer's office, and if the thresholds are crossed, then it would go up to the town board. So I would think that we should probably consult with the engineer, town engineer, to see if he believes that's the case as well, and if so, they can move through that process.
Okay.
Unless the board feels that there are
Site plan issues?
site planning issues that you think should be looked at by the board. I know you had a lot of questions about the containment and the type of stuff that's used for it. If that's the case, then you can move it through here, I think.
But I assume that when this site plan was originally approved, at least for that equipment in the first place, that must have been reviewed and analyzed and discussed earlier. So if that threshold isn't met, that we don't need to go forward with this,
Right.
that's fine.
The footprint ain't changing, everything is the same.
Yeah.
Except for the temporary tanks.
Well,
I mean, that's, it's almost a change to the site. So,
yeah, but it's not permanent.
Is that a site plan issue? If they put up a temporary structure to repair a permanent one that's already been approved?
As a temporary measure,
Yeah.
I want to say no, I don't think so.
all right, good.
It doesn't seem to
Like
be.
a
It's not
construction
permanent
detail.
I don't think
site
so.
amenity.
Yeah.
And so really what we're looking at here is the placement of the tanks and any measures that have to be placed along with them, and the construction or reconstruction of the tank. And that's it. The tank being reconstructed with the same footprint, I don't see that,
Yeah, I don't either.
As long as it stays within the time frame.
as long as it stays within the footprint, for the most part, yeah.
Yeah, you never know, so we wanted to be cautious and make sure that we didn't.
I understand.
Have to backstep. So this was the first step, and
Yeah.
this is really good direction. So yeah, we would
I
love to
see
handle
Dan-
this as an engineering
I see
review.
Dan just walked in the back.
So
Put him on the spot.
He's walking out.
There he goes.
So we're referring this to engineering.
Yeah, it's sort of an odd one, right? Because we've got, they're not bringing in a lot of material, so it doesn't cross the threshold for a lot of our permitting. It's in an area that's already disturbed. We're not disturbing any new wetlands. So it's, it's kind of borderline. Do we really even need to issue a permit, to be honest with you? Because, it would be, it's a temporary tank, so it's, in my view, it's no different than if they parked a couple of trucks there. I mean, granted, there's, liquids in there, but IBM, hopefully they remain empty, and IBM is very particular about how they operate their facility, that, We don't worry about them. They're very careful.
We didn't.
You're
we-
going to be
we
doing
used to.
some excavation, right?
Yes.
Do you know to what extent?
We do have, it's less than point,
Microphone?
Back to the mic.
it's less than 5 acres, so we're less than an acre of disturbance. And it's basically just putting in some new drainage around the existing tank wall, and then just ENS measures to
And-
go with the protection.
And you're gonna excavate within the circle of the tank, right? To go down further, lower,
Yes.
you said?
Yep,
And so you'll be moving some excavate off-site, is that correct?
correct.
Or spreading it around, or are you,
Most likely it'll
Removing
probably
it?
go off-site. We will stockpile it temporarily and then probably move it off-site.
yeah, so once you go through those thresholds, I mean, and with the construction within the wetland buffer, sounds like maybe at least a
Yeah,
permit from
and
you.
maybe the thing to do is just submit the application, which the quantities and the disturbance would all be enumerated, and then we can make a call as to how to best deal with this, whether it crosses the threshold that, to say, I guess this is one of those ones, is it a planning board matter? Even,
We
if,
can-
you know, if it's over the threshold, would it be a town board matter? Is it, is it really a site plan issue? So it's kind of in a gray area as to, under whose authority we would advance this.
Depends on what the makeup of the material being removed is. If the material has ever handled any spills or has any contaminants in it, because considering where it's coming from a vault that is meant to hold some type of chemicals. Let's consider it to be
Right,
high
yeah.
pH water. It has to,
But going back to my point, though, even if that were the case, is it a site plan issue?
Yeah.
I mean, it's fair enough that the soil that's leaving the site should be examined to see whether it exceeds any, thresholds for disposal.
I don't see a site plan issue.
Again, the appropriate
Moving, they're not doing
approval
anything.
authority is kind of the question, I guess, on the
See,
table.
he said we can park
So if
trucks.
we get that other additional information, I guess we can
The fact that they're dropping
make a
off trailers.
determination as to who wants this jump ball.
I don't see a site plan issue with this. I think there's adequate safeguards in the administrative review that your office would conduct. And if
But
you
it
feel that,
If it
but
exceeds certain thresholds
but
in the
that's
code.
yours, that comes out of your office.
Right,
It doesn't necessarily have to involve us, because I don't see any site planning issues here. The
I don't
same
see any at
standards are gonna apply, as always applied to a tank of that sort,
It's
And
in the same location,
yeah.
right, yeah, I mean. it's
and
an
the
area
temporary
that's already
tanks are gonna be
disturbed.
removed, so
But if the, the quantity of fill or anything exceeds administrative thresholds, then does the board agree that if it does, then that would be a town board matter? If it's not
I
a
think
site
it's fair
plan-
to say that there's no site, those are, managing a project type issues, not necessarily where things are gonna be and what the impact's gonna be on a site plan, in my mind.
I agree.
I agree.
Agreed.
Okay? You too?
fine.
Okay.
That's it.
All right, so yeah, so we get
Let
get
Mikey do it.
the metrics of how much stuff is moving around, we'll determine the right path for it.
If it gets kicked back to the town board, then it gets kicked back to the town board. We'll
And then
we'll
it's
deal
your
with it.
baby.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. We'll deal with it. I mean,
Get us a
we'll-
referral anyway, so we'll weigh in.
Right, yeah. I think the point is that it's in your hands at this point to determine that, and then we'll figure out the path forward. Shouldn't be that difficult to figure out.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Anything else?
No, unless there's any other questions. Did you have any questions? Okay.
I think we're good.
All right, yeah, thank you very much. That was
Thank
very
you.
enlightening of the next step we need to do,
Good.
so I think that helps the process along, so.
I think it
All
does.
right,
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank
thank
you.
you. Have a good evening.
Good night.
Right.
Okay. Number 5, and the last item on tonight's agenda is a town board referral on an application for an amended layout and support for, actually, it's a rezoning on 2302 Catherine Street and 2448 Catherine Street. Toll Brothers at Catherine Street. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Acting Chairman and members of the board. For the record, my name is David Cooper, partner with the law firm of Zarin and Steinmetz, here representing the applicant Toll Brothers, who is the contract vendee to purchase a portion of the field home Holy Comforter property. With me is Kevin E. Moses from Toll Brothers, as well as Joe Arena from Site Consultant Design, and Site Design Consultant, and my colleague Jacqueline Cohen. The town board referred this matter, and we've been before you a couple months, I think it was last month, referred this to you for two reasons, at least initially. One is for a secret recommendation. The town board is serving as lead agency on the entire action, but it includes a rezoning, so that's why it's before the town board. And then also a recommendation on the rezoning. With respect to SECRA, we've been working with staff and your board as well to identify essentially a list of questions and items to send off to the town board for us to work through. We have been presented with a memo which are kind of summarizing all of those issues, and then we've gone through them. A lot of updates to the EAF and some of the analyses that we've submitted. We have no issues with those. We're going to provide that information, as well as some additional information concerning impact assessments, which we'll provide that as well. We're hoping on the SECRA end that the planning board will direct staff tonight to prepare that memo to get it back to the town board so that we can start off and running with those issues before the town board. On the zoning recommendation, there was one comment in the memo that staff made that we did want to weigh in on tonight regarding essentially a consideration of rezoning essentially a third of the site, the eastern third of the site, kind of back where the green is, although not precisely at that line, but drawing a line down the back there and rezoning the eastern rear at R140, and then rezoning the front into RSP2, which is what we're proposing to rezone the entirety of the site to RSP2. I understand that was out there for consideration. One of the couple of things that we wanted to just point out to the planning board, and to the extent we're going to discuss that tonight, the line itself that was drawn, or is that sort of proposed, would go through 5 of the units, and so that would just render those 5 units non-conforming just by virtue of even if a couple inches is in the R140, that now would apply to the entire lot, or that entire unit. So that would render it all non-conforming. That's one issue. The other is what we believe that would do is essentially reduce the lot area of the RSP2 zone, which is the rezoning to actually accommodate and facilitate this type of redevelopment here. That would reduce it such that the density of the project wouldn't be feasible, because in the RSP2 you have to have 10,000 square feet of lot area per 3-bedroom unit, such that if you take out a third of this property from that calculation, it's not going to work. If the purpose of the comment or the suggestion is to somehow protect the rear, because that's where a lot of the sensitivity, the environmental sensitive features are, we could discuss that, like a conservation easement or some other form of restriction that would prevent development there. If the purpose is to prevent the development in the rear, we're okay with that. But the idea of sort of taking away the RSP2 for the entire property, that's not going to work with this proposal. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions with respect to either the SECRA side or the rezoning side. I know we went through a lot last meeting and can give you updates, but it's up to you.
Just go through it for the benefit of everyone.
Mm-hmm.
The 2 points of the town board referral are seeker review in connection with what action? Is it the rezoning action itself?
The rezoning and the site plan, because since the rezoning is facilitating the site plan, you got to study to put them together.
Who's responsible for approving the site plan? Not
This
the town board.
Not the town board.
I just want to clarify that, okay?
And there's a subdivision application as part of it, because we're going to be merging lots, so that would also be before this board.
All right, so let's start with at least one of the things you talked about, which is the fact that the lot line adjustment that was proposed by the planning department. And-
Before you go on, could I just get a point of clarity on that?
On the first one?
The one with, you're just speaking of now.
Okay, go ahead.
I hate to interrupt you, but I don't want
That's all right.
the snowball on itself. We are really not talking about a lot line, we're really talking about the zoning district line. So we're not proposing a lot line.
Okay,
And the comment in there is really that it is a necessary and valued discussion to have about the proper application of the zoning, its extents in that area, because this is the land use board and is tasked with informing and helping the town board make those decisions. So I just want to clear that up, that
It's
it's
not a lot
not a
line.
lot line. It's
It's a
really.
zoning line.
The question is, if you look at the zoning map, on the rest of the field home to the south, it doesn't go through the depth of the property all the way over to Catherine Street as this one is proposed. It actually is part of the property. If you follow that line up, it's generally speaking where this line is shown on the map that's included with that. So that is the question. And to David's point, take in tandem the comment about the conservation easement, because at one point, the earlier approval did have a conservation easement
Right.
on that portion of it, so it's a little bit tied up together. The question will be whether or not you want to leave it as an R2 with the potential for future development, notwithstanding the fact that there's wetlands and wetland buffers there, or do you want to leave it as at the R140, which would be a different potential? Or is it appropriate, given the discussion, to do it as they have proposed and do a conservation easement, if in fact those are the things? So it's really a generic land use question for you to give the town board some help on, so. Sorry for that
so
lengthy
does
interjection.
that change your, if it's not a lot line adjustment, it's just the definition of where the zoning line is, it's the same lot, does that change what you were saying before?
Somewhat. One, it depends on where the line is. We definitely can't draw it between across some of the units.
Agree
Well,
with you.
Right. But the other piece is if since it's not in your zoning code, right? If you fast forward 10 years from now and somebody asks the question and they didn't hear this conversation, we don't want to be in a situation where people are asking, wait a second, is this what's already been built legal? So we would prefer the approach where you essentially take the development rights off of that parcel with a full rezoning, with a restrictive covenant or whatever it might be. We've certainly in the past seen instances, it may not be in Yorktown, but in other municipalities in Westchester County, where in connection with the rezoning, you would file a restrictive covenant which says, that won't be built, but also you can't count that as part of your density if you were ever to, try to build more on the non-restricted area. The only concern I would have with going with because this is a lot, not the property line, is that it's got to be memorialized in a place that we will all be able to find 10 years from now when this is hopefully history in your memories.
Are you over 2-bedroom units, all of them?
I think all of them? Yes.
They're
Yeah.
all over,
Yeah.
they're all 3-bedroom
Yeah.
units
Yeah.
or more? Okay.
I'm struggling a little bit to understand where did this line come from that we're now being asked to consider? Yeah, we're
You
being,
put up the zoning map, you can get a handle on that.
Well, so the zoning map, you don't have the, no, but the memo from, do you have the map of the Yeah, because then we could put it up.
wondering-
Because it shows the zoning line and then the red
I
line.
think
Why
they
are
can,
we-
I think they can put up the
we're
zoning.
assuming it's a given at this point.
No.
So I'm wondering,
Can you put up the zoning map?
I guess I'm looking at this straight line that goes through these 3 or 4 units. And I guess I'm looking for what's the origination of that line? Where did that,
I'm,
It's right there.
well,
Zoning
no,
to the zoning map.
yeah, but the zoning map is, so that, right now, the R40 takes a
116?
left turn, right, towards Catherine Street, so I guess a
106.
west turn.
okay?
The line that was on the map with the memo goes straight, so it doesn't do the turn, it just goes straight towards Crown Pound.
That, what you see on the screen, that line right there, if you,
The top of the
That, yeah,
RSP3,
right.
okay?
That is the genesis of the idea.
Right.
So the line I wouldn't go by the map that's in there necessarily.
Okay.
Right.
It's a suggestion.
Okay,
It's not laid out perfectly on that map that was provided tonight, but that is the genesis of why this issue has arisen.
so the red line came about as a result of reviewing this at a,
Yes, yes.
at a smaller scale here and a larger scale here.
Maybe
You can tweak it a
misplaced.
little.
Oh, okay, all right, so,
But it's
but it's,
definitely something.
You
that
remove
can
it
move.
over.
but it's someone's interpretation, not a given, is what
That's
I'm.
right, correct.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get to. Okay, so this is an idea at this point, or a representation, right, okay.
And that's the current zoning line there.
Okay.
Just a zoning line, not a property line.
Okay, yep.
So the issue that's presented to us is whether we're interested in recommending a conservation easement and a complete rezone of the property, right? Or split the property into two zones and go on from there, I guess. Would that affect your lot count if you were to just have the zoning different? You're not losing any lot area at this point.
Again, it depends on where the line is drawn, but.
Well, let's say it's drawn in a way that you can fit everything in there that you want. Can you still do that?
You might be able to, but if somebody were to interpret not zoning lots, but not property lines, but zoning lines, because it's not 100% in your code.
Well,
we
this
be in
would
trouble.
be in the code if it were to be enacted by the town board.
Well, if there were clarity in the law, and that's the flag I'm sort of throwing up is just to make sure that from here on out, anybody reading the code would understand that when we're measuring density, we're measuring based on the entire property, even though some of it's in the R140.
John, you want to comment on that? My question is whether or not if we do the two zones in a single lot, does that affect the density of the proposed project?
Well, David's right, it's not explicit, and there's no guidance in the code that really tells us which way to go.
Figures.
In mo-
Darn
First time
lawyers,
that
I
happened.
know.
I
Darn
think-
lawyers.
yeah. I think my sense would be that it's a single lot, regardless of the number of zones that it's in, and that you can avail yourself of all of the square footage that's contained on your lot to do your calculations. That would be my first blush at it. Whether or not that pans out, from a legal standpoint, I don't know. Certainly, it makes sense, and that would restrict, the future use of that property, but that has to be memorialized somewhere.
Right.
That it does, if that's the case. I think it's a good point that David brings up, what actually does count? Can you only count, the square footage that's under the zone that you are building to? That's a good question.
Are we able to say that the site plan itself would show the zoning line so that all of the structures sit in that envelope?
Yeah.
And then would that be memorializing it enough and officially enough, I guess, if it's part of an approved site plan? And with a note?
I think since it's a question, if it moves forward in that manner, I think since it's a question, it should be memorialized in the resolution.
Right.
And probably should show up on all of their plans from here on in.
Is it,
And the board would, make that interpretation, the town board.
is the interpretation of the area that's to the, I guess it's the south of that red line on our map, if that were to be rezoned to the, I guess existing now is R
Or most of it's R140.
140, is it gonna result in the possibility of additional units?
No, I mean, I guess hypothetically, somebody could try to build on the R140, but good luck with what's
Right.
back there. But
Right.
no, I think the only concern is that it somehow decreases the overall calculation on the property. That's it. And so if the town board were to either, yes, there's a conservation easement we could go, or in the rezoning make that clear, that might be a way to.
So just to kind of jump to the bottom line, at least from my thinking, if we were to agree that change of the zone of that area is gonna result in no greater number of units, we're okay with that at this
I
point?
guess / lesser. would be the.
No, I understand that, but what I'm saying, but certainly no greater. So, I just want to be comfortable knowing that that's not going to
Yeah.
open a door to a conversation about more units. Then I'm more comfortable, let's just focus on what's going to correct the process and the resulting document that's going to memorialize all of this. That'll make me more comfortable. And you're correct in your earlier statement about putting a restriction on development rights to that area in the future. I mean, I know it's impacted by environmental concerns that are probably going to render it non-usable, but it'd be a lot cleaner to simply say nothing is going to be considered on that property
Yeah.
going forward. And it would clean everything up in one.
That would,
And that is the case. That they're not, Toll's not looking at a future project, moving it into the wetlands.
Right.
You know, and when we looked at the density, remember, we considered that area as part of RSP two, so that
Right.
it wouldn't be a sort of using that later in the future.
I'm just looking to clarify our conversation
Yeah.
here to get it to where it's more manageable, at least in my head, that we know we're focused on trying to accomplish certain things here without opening the door to other things.
Yeah, which,
So-
I think we're on the same page there.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
so does that mean that you're amenable to putting an easement, a conservation easement on the balance of the property?
You mean in that area? Yes.
Yeah, on that area.
Yeah.
So that would remove it from any further development.
I don't see that. That, for me, eliminates all the conversations
Yeah, I know.
about possibilities and makes it
That's the
clean.
end of it.
Yeah. And
And
it
I
doesn't
think we
matter.
can focus on giving you a site plan that, or recommending to the town board a very clean definition of what your overall parcel is, that now straddles a zoning line that in the future could not, perhaps. Okay.
Great, that'd be appreciated.
Are there any other environmental issues that we see that we want to point out to the town
I'm
board?
still gonna go back to the original issue that I had at the first meeting about the sewer capacity.
Yep.
Okay, that's noted. That's, you saw we're gonna issue a memo, I think. I would pick up on most of the things that the staff drafted and put that in there. This was a big issue for you right now. I think we, come to terms on that. In terms of a recommendation, I would recommend the easement, and that would kind of alleviate the issue of the two zones or one zone in this.
That's fine with us.
That issue that you raised, Bob, is in the paperwork, and that's a critical issue.
We understand.
There's always a question in these cases when you have the town board looking at a rezoning, what you're proposing as the underlying site plan that's driving it may or may not be supported by the environmental reviews that may take place,
Sure.
So, conceptually, do we have any problems with the rezone in general to accommodate this kind of use in this area?
I'm just a little bit confused. It said you want it zoned for RSP three, right?
Two.
Two.
It's currently partially in RSP three.
And currently the zoning line, at least the map I'm looking at on page 122, half of the units are in the 140 area, not just those 5 on the east side,
Right.
but on the north end of it. So what has to happen with that end of it?
We're proposing it to rezone the entirety of the property into the RSP two.
All the way up to, okay. So expanding that envelope well beyond just those 5 units that are clipped along the east side.
Correct.
Got it.
So you're looking at RSP two with the
With
conservation.
the
easement.
conservation easement. Yep.
Correct, yep.
Yeah.
Just to be clear,
Yep.
Yeah. Well, you gotta go next,
I know.
Any other environmental issues that we need to point out other than what is in the memo? And again, the use is okay in terms of a planning issue.
I don't see a problem.
John, any other comments for us?
No, I hoped that this memo and discussion would help you to formulate your comments to the board. So, to that extent, if you agree with most of the things in there, we can move forward with drafting something for you guys to actually sign off on.
Excellent.
I think we should move
Go
forward.
that way. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Good. You
Okay.
want us to stay here for another hour or two, just to? No? Good seeing you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No other business on our agenda? I'll take a
Another
motion
record, isn't
to
it?
adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Good
Good night,
Rich,
everyone.
wherever you are.